First at 9 this Friday, the 7th of March 2025. Alfred to Australia. Cyclone Alfred expected to make landfall in Australia tomorrow morning. Brisbane, home to 7,000 Sri Lankans, forecast to experience the worst effects. The debt milestone. Sri Lanka completes bilateral debt restructuring with Japan. Finance Secretary calls for the implementation of long-neglected economic reforms to emerge out of the crisis sustainably. Roads, ports and railways. No privatization of railways or ports, but private investment will be invited for key projects, Minister of Ports and Transport informs Parliament.
West Terminal 2 එකට North Port කියන විශාල master plan එකේ තියෙනවා ලෝකේ තියෙන ප්‍රධාන shipping line වලට අපි UIs කඳවනවා ඉතාම ඉක්මනට.
Opposition warns of excess port capacity creating price wars between terminals.
SLPA JCT is going to be affected by the trade war. Not anybody else. Your own terminal.
Law Steel. Deputy Minister of Housing reveals list of MPs who obtained government residences for below market value.
Chilo Dairy, Sri Lankawama, Kiren Perata. Obe Vishwasi dinu Sensorain, then Langamati Pharmacy in Labagata Hacker.
Kanta Parisang karagathot? Api Parisang.
ඉතින් මොකටද නිකන් නාගන්නේ? ස්වදේශී කොහොඹ lemongrass අද කාලෙට ෆ්‍රෙෂ්ම විසඳුම.
This is Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to Derana First at 9. I'm Aditya Drisingha joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Brought to you by the only Sri Lanka media network to rise to the pinnacle across all media platforms, recognized as the best by every survey and beloved by the people. Now, in your top story tonight, the Bureau of Meteorology in Australia forecasts that Cyclone Alfred is expected to lash northern New South Wales and southeast Queensland tomorrow morning with heavy rain and strong winds. Due to the tempestuous weather, airports and public transportation in those areas in Australia have been suspended, with schools too being closed off. Brisbane, capital of Queensland and home to over 7,000 Sri Lankans, is forecast to experience the brutal effects of Cyclone Alfred.
According to the latest statistics of Australia's Bureau of Meteorology, Cyclone Alfred is expected to cross the coast tomorrow morning, with impacts already being felt across southeast Queensland and northern New South Wales. The cyclone is set to trigger wind gusts up to 140 km per hour and 800 millimeters of rain into the weekend from Brisbane, Australia's third most populous city, to New South Wales, Northern Rivers when it eventually arrives. The country's Bureau of Meteorology further stated that the cyclone's slow progress towards the coast raised concerns that it could bring a prolonged period of heavy rain. The cyclone is expected to hit land as a Category 2 storm north of Brisbane. Australian authorities ordered thousands of people in its eastern regions to evacuate before tropical cyclone Alfred hits land tomorrow, as the storm brought heavy rain, huge waves and strong winds that cut off power for more than 84,000 homes. Brisbane Airport has also shut operations along with a citywide suspension of public transport. Meanwhile, more than 1,000 schools in southeast Queensland and 280 schools in northern New South Wales have been closed due to the adverse weather.
This area has been experiencing heavy rainfall since yesterday. The wind has also picked up since this afternoon. The Bureau of Meteorology has advised all residents to remain indoors and stay alert since the cyclone is expected to make landfall.
Australian officials have dubbed Cyclone Alfred as a very rare event for Brisbane, the capital of Queensland, which was last hit by a cyclone more than half a century ago in 1974. Meanwhile, Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese also warned citizens to take precautions as adverse weather and devastating after effects loom over Australia.
Prepare, take this seriously. This is a rare event. The governments across the board are taking this seriously, and Queenslanders, as well as those on the north coast of New South Wales, need to do so as well.
Now, Secretary to the Minister of Finance Mahinda Siriwardena asserted that it is crucial to implement much needed yet long neglected economic reforms to emerge out of crisis sustainably with the support of the international community, including that of Japan's. He made these comments while addressing an event to mark the signing ceremony of the exchange of notes on bilateral debt rescheduling between the governments of Sri Lanka and Japan. With the signing, Japan becomes the first nation of the official credit committee to conclude a bilateral agreement on debt restructuring with Sri Lanka.
The signing ceremony of the exchange of notes on bilateral debt rescheduling between the government of Sri Lanka and the government of Japan took place at the Ministry of Finance yesterday. The exchange of notes were signed by the Secretary to the Ministry of Finance, Planning and Economic Development, Mahinda Siriwardana, on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka, and Japanese Ambassador to Sri Lanka, Akio Izumata, on behalf of the government of Japan. At the same event, the amended agreement under the debt restructuring process between the Japan International Cooperation Agency and Sri Lanka was also inked.
The amendment agreement that we just signed today officially concludes the debt restructuring process between Sri Lanka and Japan. It will allow us to embrace more and more opportunities to cooperate together towards full recovery and further accelerated growth of the economy in Sri Lanka. JICA will continue to work together with Sri Lanka to support its reform efforts in such areas as governance, including, of course, anti-corruption, public finance management, electricity sector reform, and others, and to implement all the projects, including 11 long ongoing projects that contribute to supporting accelerated economic growth.
Japan has long been a steadfast development partner, one that has always stood by Sri Lanka in times of need. Japan has contributed significantly to the socio-economic development of our nation. As we move forward, we affirm our commitment to prudent economic management and sustainable growth. We look forward to further strengthening this relationship with Japan, ensuring that our cooperation continues to yield long-term mutual benefits for both our countries. The journey towards full economic recovery is far from over. We can no longer afford to roll back much needed and long neglected reforms, and it is extremely important that we keep our house in order so that we as a country could strongly come out from the difficult situation in a sustainable manner with the support of the international community, including Japan.
This agreement is the first bilateral agreement between the member country of the Official Creditor Committee and Sri Lanka. The government of Japan hopes Sri Lanka will complete all the debt restructuring as soon as possible and steadily move forward on the path to further development, and believe that today's agreement will strongly support the implementation of the IMF program ahead. Eradication of corruption and strengthening of governance are extremely important. We want to see Sri Lanka regain the confidence of investors through these efforts. The development of Sri Lanka, which occupies a strategic position in the Indian Ocean region, is essential for the stability and prosperity of the entire Indo-Pacific region. Japan intends to further cooperate in the sustainable development of Sri Lanka.
Have restructured 86 original loans worth of 354 billion yen, which is close to 2.1 billion US dollar. And currently we are implementing with the Japan about 11 projects.
පිරිපුන් ජීවිතයකට ඔබ සමගින් පෙරට Union Assurance.
චන්දුරුසුමේ කාගෙන් වන අපේ සිග TV සඳහා සුපිරි ඩීල්.
Don't waste time. Start your degree with pending A-level results this February with our partner universities. Call ACBT on 0117 699 499.
Less sugar, same great taste. From Melbourne.
Now, with Sri Lanka's debt servicing obligations resuming in 2028, sociologist and author Professor Asoka Bandarage believes that the country is not adequately prepared to recover government revenue that will be expended for debt repayments. Joining our current affairs program at Hyde Park with Indivari Amuwatta, Professor Bandarage urged Sri Lanka to attempt to recover export revenue being held in foreign banks to help repay debt.
How could the debt service payments that are being made out of Sri Lanka's government revenue, which is extremely high, be brought down? That's something that needs to be negotiated. For example, over the next 10 years, it is shown that almost 26% of government revenue will go to servicing the external debt, which is very high.
By 2028, when we start repaying our loans and interest, with all that government revenue going in for servicing debt and interest, do you think we are still not ready with a plan to recover these revenues that we will lose and to replace the revenues?
Yes, for example, some things are not being considered very seriously. For example, an amendment to the 2017 Foreign Exchange Act, Act, which deregulated financial outflows. Organizations like Global Financial Integrity have shown that there's a lot of misinvoicing plunder, as they put it, that a lot of exports revenue in foreign exchange is hoarded in banks abroad, and this includes Sri Lanka's situation. And if that money, it is claimed that there's some $53 billion outside the country. If at least some of it can be brought back, it could definitely help repay the debt and get Sri Lanka on a stronger economic footing.
Now, meanwhile, Minister Bimal Ratnayake asserted that the government will not privatize Sri Lanka's ports or railways, but will invite private investment for key projects. He made those remarks in Parliament today during the committee stage debate on the expenditure head of the Minister of Transport, Highways, Ports and Civil Aviation under the 2025 budget. Meanwhile, opposition legislator Rauf Hakim warned that the government's eagerness in increasing the container capacity of Sri Lanka's ports may backfire by creating price wars between terminals. We have to begin today's debate with an unfortunate announcement. The person who claimed to be licensed to drive Ferraris collided head-on with Al Jazeera. Given his recent statements, it appears as if he has sustained brain damage. I extend my sympathy to him for his mishap. Many foreigners know Sri Lanka for its train service. Our railway service is sexy, but it is not healthy. There are delays. Within the next year or two, we intend to make the railway service into an efficient service that is attractive to the public. Currently, the railway service is entirely state-owned, but there are certain aspects of it that can benefit from private sector involvement. We intend to brand trains and railway stations, and we invite the private sector to join this initiative. In line with Women's Day, which falls tomorrow, we have taken a policy decision to recruit women for all positions within the National Transport Board and the Railway Department. There are numerous business opportunities at bus stations and railway stations. A subcommittee has been appointed, chaired by Deputy Minister Chaturanga Besingha, to examine how to develop such supportive businesses, and I am happy to say that Samagi Janabalawegaya parliamentarian Jagat Vitana, a talented businessman in the field of transport, is a member of that committee. Even though we represent two different political camps, his service has been very constructive and other MPs can learn from his example. We will not privatize railways or ports. In fact, we cannot do so as it is a moral issue. However, ports happen to be one of the largest industries worldwide, and it definitely requires private players. We will invite expressions of interest from major shipping lines for projects under the master plan comprising the West Container Terminal 2 and Colombo North Port. The East Container Terminal will begin operations at 50% capacity in July this year. Several companies abandoned the Central Expressway project. A delegation from the China Exim Bank will arrive in Sri Lanka the day after tomorrow, and we will try to commence the first phase of the Central Expressway project with their support. The Mattula Airport project cost 36.5 billion rupees, and during the past 5 years, it has incurred a loss of 38.5 billion rupees. We are exploring the possibility of constructing an aeroplane repair center at Mattula. Construction of the Bandaranaike International Airport development project will begin in October this year.
Issue pertaining to the contract concession agreement with Adani Ports. That issue is an impediment to calling new tenders. So Adani terminal contract blocks SLPA's partnership for East Terminal. This issue will also result in further delays in getting a party identified to start developing the balance available terminals.
Adani agreement, yes, it has blocked some issues, but that is not relevant to ECT. Even the West Terminal 2, we can start.
I understand that. Available container terminal capacity of the Colombo port by end of 2026 is expected to be 14.15 million TEUs, which is about 45% more than the 7.79 TEUs handled in the year 2024. So you're going to double the capacity. Hambantota port's capacity also from 1 million capacity is expected to be increased to 2 million by end of 2027. Now this will also create further excess capacity over the country's demand and create price war with terminals. And the Colombo port, which is going to have 45% over capacity by end of 2026, SLPA JCT is going to be affected by the trade war. Not anybody else. Your own terminal, which is giving you 70% of your income, is going to suffer because of the price war.
Now, citing recent statistics, Prime Minister Dr. Haruni Amarasuriya claims that women spend on average 6 hours a day on unpaid domestic labour, which includes childcare, household chores and elder care, which is not often valued by the traditional economic metrics. Speaking at an International Women's Day celebration, the Premier emphasized that women's invisible labour must be addressed. She also committed herself to meaningful policy changes for a better future for women.
International Women's Day was celebrated today at the Ministry of Women and Child Development in Battaramulla under the patronage of Prime Minister Dr. Harini Amarasuriya.
The figure focuses only on formal paid labour, which does not account for the vast amount of unpaid work that women perform. And unless we address this, we will never be able to really understand what prevents women from entering the labour force and what steps we really need to take to ensure that women are also acknowledged fully as part of the labour force. Recent statistics show as women in average spend an average of 6 hours a day on unpaid domestic labour, including childcare, cleaning, cooking and elder care. This invisible labour, crucial to the functioning of households and societies, is not valued within traditional economic metrics. And this is something that we really need to change. This year's International Women's Day theme is Accelerate Action, and it calls for urgent and decisive steps to advance gender equality. We still have a long way to go in achieving real gender equality. It's not only about empowering women, it is about uplifting the entire nation. We must continue to dismantle the barriers that still exist. We must commit to meaningful policy changes and collective efforts to build a future where every woman and girl has the freedom to reach her full potential, free from discrimination and violence. And I'm confident that under the able leadership of our minister and our deputy minister and everyone else in this ministry, we will make a difference during these 5 years.
Fast track your career from O-levels with eSoft.
Diabetesol සීනි වලින් පරිස්සම් වන ඔබට අමතක නොවන පෝෂණය.
Kalani wire kisi ginnak naha.
කිසි ගින්නක් නෑ. Kalani Fire Shield Wire.
Malibu chocolate cream, inguru and lemon puff. Less sugar, same great taste. From Malibu.
Responsibility to look after our health.
The best nutritional supplement for diabetic patients with no added sugar. Maliban Vitagen. Stay healthy for a good reason.
Now, Deputy Minister of Housing TB Sarath presented a list of parliamentarians who had received compensation for their residences being torched during the struggle in 2022, as well as MPs who had acquired housing units at the Viatpura housing scheme, claiming that certain MPs who had been compensated had also acquired residences below market value at the housing scheme. Speaking in Parliament today, Deputy Minister Sarath went on to say that legal action will be taken against those who acquired housing units deviating from the standard purchasing process.
A list of MPs who acquired housing units from the Viatpura housing scheme at rates below market value was presented to Parliament today. The list also included MPs who claimed compensation for property damage sustained during the riots of 2022 and several MPs who simultaneously claimed the compensation granted for property damage and acquired government housing units at rates below market value. The list was presented to the House by Deputy Minister of Housing TB Sarath.
Units were sold to parliamentarians from the Viatpura housing scheme. During the struggle in 2022, when protesters torched several residences owned by parliamentarians, the Speaker signed off on providing housing units to 76 MPs. The ministers in question have claimed that they cannot pay the full market value of the houses concerned. Consequently, 76 units were chosen from the 101-unit B block. Say, for example, that the value of the house at the time of construction was 10 million rupees and that it is valued at 20 million rupees after construction. Then the MP would have to pay within a year 25% of the average between the price of the house before construction and after construction. The remainder is payable within 15 years. Accordingly, Prasanna Ranatunga has paid 9.9 million rupees for the house allocated for him. The government incurred a loss of 11 million rupees. MP Muzammil paid 33 million rupees while the government incurred a loss of 10 million rupees. MP Nimal Piyatissa paid 3.3 million rupees while the government incurred a loss of 9.9 million rupees. MP Gamini Waleboda paid 3.3 million rupees, causing a loss of 9 million rupees to the government. Former Speaker Mahindayapa Abewardana paid 5.3 million rupees, causing a 16 million rupee loss for the government. MP Gamini Lokuge paid 4 million rupees while the government incurred a loss of 12 million rupees. MP Janaka Tissakutty Arachchi paid 4.1 million rupees while the government incurred a loss of 12 million rupees. MP Veerasinghe Devage Veerasinghe paid 4.2 million rupees, causing a loss of 12 million rupees to the government. MP SM Chandrasena paid 4.6 million rupees, causing losses of 13 million rupees to the government. Attorney at law Premanath Chaminda Dolavatta paid 4.1 million rupees, causing a loss of 12 million rupees to the government.
මිලියන 4.1 මිලියන 12 පාඩු යාණ්ඩුවට.
අර ඇමතුමාට අපි දැනගන්න කැමති ඔයා අතතර ඉන්නවද කලින් වන්දි ගත්තු කට්ටිය?
ඔව් මෙතන ඉන්න වන්දි ගත්තු අය.
ඒ කියන්නේ වන්දිත් අර
වන්දි මුදලුත් අරගෙන තියෙනවා. ඊට අමතරව මේ
Yes, those who were compensated also claimed compensation. They have obtained compensation for houses already covered by insurance. They have also misappropriated government housing schemes. We wonder if they deliberately set their houses ablaze. They have acquired houses for merely burnt windows. The new government will have to bring in numerous policies to reclaim those houses. These residences were provided upon cabinet and parliament approval. They have created a legitimized theft from the government. We expect to take legal action against this matter.
කටයුතු කරන්න බලාපොරොත්තු වෙනවා.
ඉතින් මම කියන්නේ මේ
I am of the view that presenting lists as such is good. However, the government must take legal action rather than merely presenting lists. Publishing lists alone serves no good.
යමක් දැනෙන්නෙත් නැහැ.
With that, here's a look at the latest political thoughts on the local government elections looming ahead and the so far unsuccessful police manhunt for IGP Deshabandhu Tennakone. No political movement ever feared elections. However, the opposition today fears the polls. The government has successfully connected with many citizens over a very short period of time.
The government said that they would address most issues swiftly over one or two pen strokes. However, they don't seem to be delivering on their promises.
They deceived the public. Given this context, we believe that the people who yearn for a better future will join us.
Keep in mind that we will unite to choose a mayor or a chairman of a local government body, although we might not unite as parties. We are ready to defeat the National People's Power. We are ready to completely decimate the NPP.
The people of this country are determined to carry forward our political success down to the local government level. We will secure a strong win to bolster the grassroots political infrastructure.
The Sarvajana Balaya under the banner of the medallion will contest this election. We will serve the people by implementing a model creative agenda within every local government body entrusted to us by the people.
This is a very peculiar country. We have never heard of such a scenario anywhere else in the world. Today we have an acting IGP, while the IGP is nowhere to be found. This is a ridiculous situation. The acting IGP's police force is now hunting the missing IGP.
This is very embarrassing. The police expect public support to find the Inspector General. This might even turn into a game to be played at New Year celebrations this April.
Deputy Minister Sunil Watagala claimed that he knew where the IGP and the female suspect in the Ganemula Sanjeeva murder are hiding and that they will be arrested when necessary. We got to know that IGP Deshabandhu Tennakone is attempting to secure a court order preventing his arrest. Until such time, he plans to evade arrest. This is a very serious development if true. If the government knows where the suspect is hiding, they must be swiftly arrested. There is no need to receive public assistance. Sunil Watagala might reveal that information if he is inquired on it. He himself can claim the 1.2 million rupee reward. The amount can then be credited to the JVP's party fund. Now, a project to clean up garbage accumulated around coral reefs was organised in Sinnapadu Putlam in line with the Clean Sri Lanka's national initiative. The initiative was organised to prevent damage caused to the seabed by various man-made objects, including fishing nets, which have tangled up in coral reefs. Close to 50 divers, along with members of the Sri Lanka Scuba Divers Association and MPs of the National People's Power representing the Puttalam district, engaged in the cleanup program. Divers who were taken to sea by boat cleaned the seabed off the coast in Puttalam by removing non-biodegradable material tangled with coral reefs. The seabed cleanup project went on for about 3 hours, after which divers brought to shore the fish nets and other waste material. Waste materials brought as such to shore were later disposed sustainably. Welcome back. Now, Sri Lanka's official reserve assets have recorded a slight improvement in February 2025, reaching $6.095 billion. This represents a 0.5% increase from $6.065 billion in January this year. The uptick was driven primarily by foreign currency reserves, the largest component of official reserve assets, which increased by 0.7% to $6.031 billion from $5.986 billion in the previous month. Now, the Sri Lankan foreign exchange market has successfully implemented a foreign exchange matching platform per an initiative by the Central Bank of Sri Lanka. This platform, which is accessible to all licensed commercial banks, the National Savings Bank and the CBSL, was introduced to enhance price discovery and to promote greater transparency and efficiency in the domestic foreign exchange market. Accordingly, Bloomberg's B-Match foreign exchange matching platform was chosen by the domestic foreign exchange market for this purpose. B-Match facilitates spot transactions in US dollars against the Sri Lankan rupee, enabling market participants to place anonymous orders within a central limit order book. CBSL is provided with the oversight functionality through B-Match to facilitate its regulatory responsibilities. The real-time executable quotes provided by market participants on B-Match is expected to improve price discovery in the interbank market, leading to market-reflective and competitive prices, resulting in great efficiency in price discovery for the retail foreign exchange market. Now, in other business news, the Colombo Stock Exchange closed in red today, resulted by price losses in counters such as Chevron Lubricants, Sampath Bank and LOLC Holdings. The Colombo Stock Exchange all-share price index slipped 0.05%, settling at 16,115.47 points. The S&P Sri Lanka 20, meanwhile, dropped 0.19%, ending at 4,808.33 points. During the week, the ASPI and the S&P Sri Lanka 20 lost 2.2% and 2.5% respectively, while recording an average daily turnover of 2.73 billion rupees. The market turnover crossed 2.1 billion rupees, with the capital goods sector closing as the top contributor to turnover. The banking sector was the second highest contributor. Meanwhile, foreigners closed as net sellers. With that, let's take a look at how the rupee traded against other major currencies during the day. That's all the news we have for you tonight. Thank you. Have a great night.